Hello, I'm Dr. Mary Meehan. As a Catholic university, Seton Hall University is committed to supporting educational achievement within our community. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. The law firm of Gibbons, P.C. Seton Hall University, where leaders learn. The New Jersey Association of Health Underwriters, New Jersey's benefits specialist. Verizon. The Northward Center. And by Community Food Bank of New Jersey. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media. And by Meadowlands Regional Chamber, building essential connections that drive business growth.
Welcome to State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato, coming to you from the beautiful Agnes Veris NJTV studio in Newark, New Jersey. We're pleased to welcome for the first time on this show, in this venue, Greg Lalevee, who is a business manager, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. Describe that union.
We're men and women who operate heavy equipment that builds infrastructure projects, buildings, mine aggregates all around the state of New Jersey.
Last time Greg was with us, there was a whole debate going on about the gas tax in New Jersey to fund the Transportation Trust Fund. The gas tax passed. There's some additional money in the Transportation Trust Fund to long-term funding of transportation projects, roads and bridges. How are we doing?
We're doing well now. The money is starting to hit the street, so people can see a lot of paving projects going on now. We're starting to see the more complex road and bridge projects get into the pipeline to be bid to address choke points and deficient bridges. So we're moving in the right direction. In
fact, Greg has been appointed to, as we do this program, soon to be Governor Murphy will be taking office. You've been appointed to the Transition Committee dealing with what area?
Labor and Workforce Development.
Shocking. Talk about the workforce that you represent. Who are these folks and why do these issues of infrastructure, not sexy, but so important, matter so much to them?
Well, infrastructure is like the blood system in a body. It's going to move our economy around. It moves goods. It moves services. It keeps businesses competitive. When people go to site a business in a place, they look to see how easy it is to get their goods around, how easy it is to get their people to and from work. So it's critical to everything we do.
So if you're advising Governor Murphy, soon to be Governor Murphy, on these issues, what would you say the number one, two, I'm not going to say three, one and two priorities are?
To talk about New Jersey transit, I think our rail infrastructure is seriously underserved.
Define underserved.
Well, there was a report that came out over the summer about the safety of New Jersey transit, and the fellow who put that report up was dismissed from New Jersey transit. I think that has to be looked at. There was an assembly hearing, where he testified and talked about the safety issues on transit. If you look at the Northeast Corridor, where Amtrak owns it, there's several spots where trains have to slow down to 35 miles an hour if there's an Acela coming the other way. Because
Acela is one of the Amtrak trains.
Right, because there's a risk of a derailment. So signaling needs to be upgraded, tracks need to be looked at. Then, of course, the big thing on the board would be the Gateway project.
Going into New York City?
Yeah.
In and out of New York City.
New tunnels under the Hudson River. When Pennsylvania Railroad came in and built both Penn stations, the two tunnels under the Hudson River, the Portal Bridge, that was in 1920. All those assets are 100 years old, and they've aged just like anything would over 100 years.
Is it going to happen, Gateway? Gateway tunnel?
Certainly hope so. I think it's critical to this region's economy that it does happen.
Do you think President Trump gets it, the importance of it?
Being a New Yorker, I believe he would, yes.
Let's try this. You know what's so interesting? The bridges. There was a report put out, I believe by the DOT, if I'm mistaken, you will correct me, that talked about the condition of our bridges and that a high percentage of them are crumbling underneath the infrastructure, the concrete. Things are not as strong as they need to be. And I don't want to, say the sky is falling, but how dangerous are they?
Well, bridges come in two categories they could put them in: structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. Structurally deficient means that it needs serious upgrade. The concrete that you referred to just needs to be refinished, redone. The decks need to be redone. Functionally obsolete means it's carrying more traffic than it was ever designed for. So those are places that cause choke points, places where the bridge is weak for what it carries on a day-to-day basis. If you looked at the list of bridges that are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete county to county, I think people would be shocked at how much there is out there to do.
So here's what's so interesting to me, and I'll admit this, and I knew this interview was coming up, so I checked myself when I thought this. There was road construction going on, and I found myself irritated by it. And I thought, time out. That's progress, correct?
Yes, good progress.
Talk to folks who are like, come on, another road project? Tell folks, while there is some inconvenience, the payoff.
Well, there is inconvenience, but a lot of the road projects that come out end up relieving choke points, places where there's not good flow, not enough lanes.
Ridiculous traffic.
Exactly, where it backs up each and every day. So it's one step back, two steps forward into relieving that choke point.
So what you're saying is we, as New Jerseyans, as Americans, don't think much about infrastructure until there's a serious problem. You remember, I think I might have said this in our last interview, was it the Mayanas Bridge? Mm-hmm. There was a horrible accident.
Yes.
And the bridge collapsed. Cars actually, I believe, went into the water. Dark, nighttime, people were killed. Like,
yeah, a dozen or so people died.
A dozen or so people died. We can't wait for that.
No, that's impossible.
But what I'm trying to get at is people don't think about it until you have a crisis, and then the question is, why didn't they do something about that?
And that's what they'll do. They'll look to lay the blame. And I understand people don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want the extra time on the ride home. The reality is that they're spending that time each and every day incrementally. And that's lost revenue to a business.
How's that lost revenue?
Well, businesses aren't getting their people to work on time. They're not getting a salesperson or other person from point A to point B as efficiently as they could. It's lost time with families at the end of the day.
Quality of life.
Absolutely.
Last question for you before I let you out of here. Someone says, well, there's not enough money to do this, and we have to make tough decisions in terms of priorities. School funding of education, higher funding for higher education, if you will, property tax relief, the whole range of things that matter. Where does transportation, where does infrastructure fit into that matrix?
Well, thankfully, the broader picture for the state was solved this year, at least for 8 years going forward.
With the Transportation Trust Fund?
Yes.
That gets us 8 years?
Yes.
And before I let you out of here, Greg, describe exactly what that is. Does all the money come from the gas tax?
Well, it funds $2 billion from the state side. What we have to make sure over the next 8 years is that we're vigilant in making sure we get the federal matching funds. So our $2 billion a year should really be $4 billion a year when the federal government matches our
Is the Fed
state.
committed to actually matching it?
Well, the Trump administration is still working on getting itself together in the transportation area. There's several seats that aren't filled yet. But that's...
I mean cabinet level positions?
Sub-cabinet, inside the
people who actually get stuff done?
Yes.
By the way, let me disclose that Local 825 is one of the supporters of some of the public awareness programming we do, public policy programming. And Greg Lalevee is business manager, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. How many members do you think you have?
7,000.
You knew exactly. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are thrilled to be joined by Marilyn Harris, Vice President of Community Relations at Newark Beth Israel Medical Center, which is tied to the RWJBarnabas Health System, a funder of public broadcasting, to fully disclose. Marilyn, we were at a meeting the other day. I was honored to moderate of the Newark Community Advisory Board. We're talking about a whole range of issues. And there's this documentary we're about to show a clip of, Food for Thought. Set it up. What is it all about?
Food for Thought, the path to food security in Newark, New Jersey, is an opportunity for us to look at, to understand the importance of access to food in our community. We came together with some of our youth, which was absolutely wonderful. We came together with our community leaders and looked at what is needed in order to make sure that the city of Newark and our community has access to food.
Ready to take a look?
Oh, absolutely.
This is Food for Thought. Check it out.
Is access. So the access to the greenhouse is helping this community, but we don't have enough access. We don't have enough greenhouses. We don't have enough bodegas that are serving healthy food that is properly refrigerated or that is at the proper price. We need more spaces where people won't feel as food insecure.
Now, the greenhouse serves several purposes. One of it is certainly to provide fresh fruits and vegetables for our community. But it is a true learning center for Newark.
Beautiful stuff. By the way, to the young people who produce that, it's for us in the broadcasting business, that's impressive.
Well, you know what? Our youth were absolutely phenomenal in this process where they learned citizen journalism. Because we understood that in order to make sure that something was sustainable, it had to deal with our youth as well. And so that documentary that you see and that will be aired coming toward the end of January 2018 was instrumental by them. It was structured by them. They interviewed. They did some of the camera shots. They're phenomenal and brilliant.
Good stuff. And by the way, a couple of things we saw in there that really struck me. Newark is often called a food desert.
Yeah.
Talk about that, and what does it have to do with what's going on in terms of creating fruit or, growing fruits and vegetables at the Beth?
Yes, Newark is considered to be a food desert, which means not necessarily that there's not food, there's not access to food.
High quality food, healthy food.
Absolutely, and it's extremely important. You know why? Because when we look at health and RWJBarnabas Health and Newark Beth Israel Medical Center, Newark Beth Israel Medical Center is an anchor institution in the city of Newark, and we are in the business of making sure that everyone is healthy. And we begin to look at food, you begin to understand that obesity actually is probably due to a lack of access to healthy food.
Hold on one second. If someone is not eating enough, how is then obesity and then diabetes an issue?
Because what happens is that they're not eating properly. So let's say in the morning what happens, you go to the store, you go to the local bodega, and what do you get? Chips and soda, which ends up leading to obesity, which ends up leading to diabetes, which ends up leading to health problems. We have come to understand that we can no longer treat just episodic illness.
So someone says, well, a hospital's not supposed to do this, devil's advocate. Just wait till somebody comes in the hospital. That's good enough. You say?
Absolutely not. Hospitals must do this. This is what we're about. We understand that we have to deal with the social determinants of health.
Social determinants of health. Let's define that.
So we understand that our health is not just about episodic illness, but it has to do with where we live. It has to do with what we eat. Has to do with whether or not we have a job. And therefore, RWJBarnabas Health implemented our social impact and community investment practice. What does that mean? We walk alongside our community. We listen to our community to find out what we can do to help have strategies for long-term health care.
Is that with the hire, buy, the Newark thing?
Yes, it is.
Hiring people in Newark and creating opportunities for employment and training them. Again, someone might say it's interesting for a healthcare system to be involved in that.
Yes.
And by the way, check out our website, steveadubato.org. You'll see an interview that we did with Ros Baraka, the mayor, with Barry Ostrowski, your CEO, as well as Micheline Davis from the organization talking about this. But here's the other thing I want to get to.
Please.
Food insecurity. If we truly cared as much as we say we do, what would we do as citizens?
If we really care about food, we would make sure that everyone has access to that. So how do we do that? We come together and collaborative to make sure that we're making sure that our local food pantries, that our local community stores, that our hospitals, all are coming together to look at our assets in our community to make sure that we're having conversations around this. It is something that is truly imperative.
We can't ignore this.
We cannot.
What's the price to pay when we do?
The price to pay we do is people are going to die. Our communities are not going to be healthy and vibrant. Why? Look at this. A child comes to school. They do not eat, right? You don't have a good breakfast. So therefore, you don't pass the test.
It's an educational issue.
It's an educational issue. Then it becomes an economic issue. Why? You don't graduate. You cannot find a job. And then it becomes a social issue. We must understand that our health is not just our physical being, it's also our social being and our economic being. And therefore, RWJBarnabas Health has come to understand the importance. We have to do this.
Marilyn Harris is Vice President of Community Relations at Newark Beth Israel Medical Center, and I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And again, once again, I'm honored to moderate many of the forums that we have at Newark Beth and other Newark community-related institutions around these issues.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Go.
We'll be right back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're pleased to be joined by Julie Roginsky, President of Comprehensive Communication Group, and our own colleague, Joanna Gagis, host of Life and Living on NJTV and FiOS. I want to thank both of you for joining us to discuss a very serious topic. You know, I was framing this in my mind. Sexual harassment, sexual abuse, what is going on as we tape this program during the holidays of 2017. How bad is the situation, and has it been this bad that long? Loaded question, I know, and then what the heck do we need to do?
Well, I think women have known how long it's been bad, and it has been bad. I think I don't want to speak for all women, but I speak for a lot of them when I say that women, I think, have been aware of this issue for a long time. I think it's interesting that it's now just coming to the fore, although it's not the first iteration. When I first came up in politics in 1993, we had the Anita Hill hearings, Clarence Thomas hearings, and obviously that was a huge bellwether and a huge driving force for a lot of women to get involved in politics. And then the issue kind of went away. And now it's back and really in full force, and I really hope it's not going to take another 20, 25 years for people to focus on what I think is a very serious issue. You know,
you have faced this. You have faced this.
Yes.
You posted something on Facebook about it in connection with the Me Too movement. You cannot talk about certain aspects,
yes.
Which we totally understand.
Right.
But Joanna, when you posted that, I remember reading it, just going through Facebook, and I said, wait, that's our Joanna posting about your experiences and how you've been a victim. Why'd you do that?
I did that because there needs to be a sense of solidarity among women. And if I know that I've experienced something and I'm not using my platform, using my voice to not only join in the conversation, make others realize that it's that widespread, that it is people you know, it's people in your family, people you work with, but also because this conversation needs to continue. This can't be a flash in the pan when when the Harvey Weinstein drama dies down, that this goes away. And actually, on a national level, I think so many women have chimed into the conversation that we are seeing that this does have legs, unfortunately.
So do you think there really is a genuine opportunity to make a real difference right now?
Well, I think there's an opportunity to think about why this happens and how it happens. And it doesn't just begin by people grabbing somebody or sexually assaulting somebody or sexually harassing somebody. I think it begins when men don't treat women in an equitable way. You know, we here in New Jersey spend we here in New Jersey spend a lot of time talking about equal work for equal pay, for example. We don't talk much about equal treatment for equal work. We don't talk about the fact that women have to face, I'm not talking about the harassment sexually or even the sexual assault, God forbid, but talking about the day in, day out systemic treatment of women is something that's other, is not quite co-equal, something that's not quite worthy of the same merits and attention that men get. And I think women have a lot of work they have to do on a daily basis to be treated, even professionally, in the same way that men are, just by virtue of the fact that they're women. And that leads to, It
does lead to, respectfully.
Of course, it does. And
they're not separate issues. Like someone doesn't get the value of a woman, doesn't pay that woman what she's worth, doesn't treat, okay,
but Steve,
that's bad stuff. How do you connect it to?
Because Steve, if you don't treat a woman equally professionally, it's one step away from not thinking of her as somebody that deserves treatment as a human being, and then you start the grabbing.
And then the whole sexual...
And then you start the grabbing, and then you start the assault, and then you started thinking of her as a thing and an object, not necessarily somebody that's an equal of yours to be treated with respect. And I think that begins not just from a sexual perspective, but also from just a meritorious perspective.
Chime in.
Absolutely. I think there are abuses of power in many forms, right? And it's almost this dehumanization of a woman where it's the understanding...
I would never face. That guys
not
basically
in the same
do not
way.
face. Go ahead.
Not in the same way. And I think there's a different conversation here that we can get to later on where there's the differences in age, right? Because young boys, I think, can face these kinds of situations in a different way, or maybe in a similar way. But I think it's really abuse of power, and then really understanding that the way you treat a woman is the way you treat a human. The way you treat a human is the way you treat a woman. And it's not just the workplace, truthfully. And
go ahead, finish your point.
Well, so this conversation, as I see it as a mom, as a working professional, really starts in the home. It starts when we're young. It starts with how we raise our boys and how we raise our girls. Because I'll give you just a quick example. We were out to dinner with family friends, and little boy, same age as my daughter, wanted to kiss my daughter and thought it was really fun. And everyone kind of got a laugh out of it, including my daughter.
Did you?
At first, because it was cute, he's kissing her on the cheek, she's laughing, she seems fine with it. And then this moment changed where she didn't like it anymore, and she wanted him to stop, and she was scared to tell him to stop. And in that moment, I had to realize that it's my job now to empower my daughter, because this is when it starts. So we came home and I said, listen, if you didn't like that, you say stop. And if he doesn't stop, you say stop really loudly and you yell and say, Mommy, I want him to stop.
Even with kids?
Even with kids.
There's nothing cute about that.
It starts in the home. No.
And you've got it.
I have a little boy, yeah. No, I have a little boy, and I mean, you know, this is something I've thought about over the last year, certainly a great deal. And I think it's our responsibility to some extent as parents to teach these little boys, including mine, who, you know, now is at that age where girls are a little yucky and girls are not somebody that he wants to necessarily hang out with. And I keep saying, actually, there's really no difference in terms of what boys can do and girls can do. And that's something you have to teach kids, I believe, really, especially our boys, from day one.
So fast forward to older boys, men, middle-aged men, me, others. What should we and could we be doing, Julie?
Well, I think it really begins with cognitively understanding, and this is not to diminish any experience that any man has had, but I don't think you guys really get what...
Do we have any idea what you're talking about?
You don't. I mean, you do intellectually, I think.
No, I'm talking about viscerally, at a human level.
Viscerally, you no more understand what I think we go through than I understand what people who are African Americans living in an oppressed society might believe, or other people who are not necessarily enfranchised to the extent that men are. And so I think it's very important for men to understand that, as I said, this does not just happen overnight where somebody is on the chamber train, for example, and wants to grab a young staffer. This begins when they don't treat the staffer properly verbally. They don't think of her as somebody who's worth it on the merits, and they don't think of her as somebody who's co-equal to the men on the campaign or the men that are co-equal in the office. And so for me, it's very important to understand this doesn't just arise in a vacuum. This arises from something that people have to focus on day in, day out, which is that I know plenty of women who've had to work 20 times harder to command the respect that men do in the workplace. And then that translates itself into other issues, obviously.
So how do we make sure that it doesn't end here? You're talking about, you know, you didn't use the term flash in the pan, but the Me Too movement, if you will. How do we make sure that this sustains, but also that it is seen as so abhorrent, so terrible, so sick, that even if someone's thinking, it can't go backwards. You need to expose as much as possible, but any thoughts as to how we sustain this?
Absolutely. And I think, so I'm a member of Executive Women of New Jersey, an organization in New Jersey whose mission is to see women in the C-suite, on corporate boards, in positions of power.
Would more women in the position of power help as it relates to a lot of the issues? You believe that?
Absolutely. If you want to change a culture, especially a corporate culture, you need to see women at the highest levels who are dealing with the HR complaints, who are addressing these concerns. Look at the Harvey Weinstein board. They settled. Look at Fox. Look at all of these different companies who have settled these disputes. If you had women in positions of power,
you think it would be more upfront? Hey, let's deal with this. No sweeping it under the rug.
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. And I think those women who are in position of power have a responsibility to stand up, even if it's unpopular, even if you're outnumbered. That is how we make a change.
Chime in on this one.
Well, I totally agree. I mean, look, ultimately, you have a lot of these corporate boards and a lot of these corporate C-suites, as you said, where you have a lot of women who work for powerful men. The men may be the harassers themselves. Harvey Weinstein's a very good example. I can think
By the way,
of a few others.
the only one reason
Yes.
I want to mention Kevin Spacey is because there were boys young boys involved who were victims.
Right.
It's clearly disproportionately women, but I just want to show respect
Oh,
to some of those folks who are dealing with it
of course.
as well. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right, but you know, it's up to the women, as I think you just made an excellent point, up to the women who work for these powerful men not to enable this kind of behavior. We've seen it over and over and over again.
Call them on it.
Call them out, but see, it's, you know, I'll say this.
I don't want to say that cavalierly.
No, it's not.
30 seconds left. Go ahead.
But you also have to understand, for a lot of these women, this is their livelihood, this is their career. They call these men out. They may be out of a job. I've been in that situation myself. I've called men out on bad behavior. The men have been promoted. I've been sidelined. So that's happened, and I'm in a fairly high-ranking
Yes, you are.
world. So, you know, if it happens to me, it can happen to anybody.
Julie, Joanna, I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.
And we have no delusion or illusion that we've solved anything, but we've moved the conversation forward, and we'll continue to do that. Thank you both.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Catch you next time.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by New Jersey Sharing Network, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., Seton Hall University, where leaders learn, the New Jersey Association of Health Underwriters, Verizon, the Northward Center, and by Community Food Bank of New Jersey.
As one of America's premier Catholic universities, Seton Hall is a place where leaders learn to excel, both in and out of the classroom, to explore new frontiers, to serve those in need, to succeed as champions, to achieve their dreams. Seton Hall University, where leaders learn.